Yes, not so much a hippie. I think I have more of that 60s chick in me now than I did probably during the 60s. I, I kind of go with my own flow and, I kind of take on those traits. That's what I feel anyway. When I was in the actual 60s, I think it was more important for me to achieve at school. I was a bookworm. And, I just didn't really have much to do with what was going on in the 60s.
Do you regret not taking advantage of that movement?
Not really, because I don't think I was a part of it, actually. I certainly empathize with what they did, bucking against the infrastructure. And then many of those, as you know, just kind of went with the establishment.
So what possessed you to write the memoir?
Okay, basically, when I first published my first novel, that would be 2008, I realized I needed to gain a little more visibility. And my book, Underlying Notes, had the thread of the 60s running through it. And I stumbled across the site called the 60s Official Site, and I submitted a first memoir called a Mini Tribute to Twiggy. And he liked it and invited me to write more and even offered me my own webpage there. So 100 memoirs later, there you go. And only recently I decided to put them together in a collection so my grandnephew would have a legacy. That's basically the reason I did it.
So Underlying Notes was your first novel.
Yes, it is.
That's let's see, what kind of novel is this?
Contemporary women's fiction.
Oh, okay, interesting. And did you get you went to college, you said, did you do your degree in writing, or is this a new passion for you?
It was a new passion. My degree was in elementary ed, and at the time when I went to college, which was Rhode Island College, basically a teacher's college back then, I minored in English. And, I always had a flair for writing, but I put it aside during my years of teaching. And then when I retired, I actually read a book. Do a lot of reading, but when I read Anne Lamott's The Blue Shoe, it just aspired to the type of writing I like to do. She just takes ordinary things and they become extraordinary when she works it out with the characters. And a fan of hers, I know she had a quote, she likes to write what she reads, and that's what I like to do. I like to write what I read, and that's how it started.
So this is Anne Lamott, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Have you met her or
No.
had any interaction with her? You just read her fiction and it
Yes.
inspired you to write your own?
Admire. Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. And how long ago did you publish your first novel, Underlying Notes?
Well, it's about 10 years ago. And ironically, when I first got that published, I actually started writing the second novel in contemporary, titled In a Lightning Quiche. But I'm fond of saying, life's hairpin turns and detours. I'd put it aside, go back to it. And then when things were in an even keel, by 2016 or so, I kind of went full steam ahead and got it published. So it
You have a
actually,
way with titles, an enlightening quiche. I love that. I love how that kind of flows off the tongue. I mean, I love the. I'm trying to go back to your author page before I make a. Let's see, what was it? I need to start opening up more than one tab. The 100 Wild Mushrooms and Underlying Notes. These are great, great titles. But it looks like Once Upon Fabulous Time is a different type of novel. Is that
I'm proud of
canon?
that, because that's a collaboration between my support team that I know Aaliyah Del Rey talked about, the Indie Fabs. So
Yeah,
I'm very proud of that achievement.
it's interesting. How long are you? Have you been with that group from the beginning?
Yes, since we formed in 2016.
It's very fascinating to me that you would have I don't know, would you call it a commune basically of other writers supporting each other, reading each other's work, working on each other's covers, and basically just getting the best work out into the world. And I mean, how does it work exactly within your writing community? Do you guys upvote each other, tweet each other's stuff out? I mean, how does it work as far as
I feel we do. I'm kind of like the Neanderthal. I say behind. I don't have a Twitter account. I don't have a special standalone website, although I have my webpage at Author's Den. I don't have a newsletter. I do blog though, and I kind of keep that stuff at a minimum, and it kind of goes against what I see going on that seems to be working, I suppose, well for others, like the newsletter swamp. But yes, amongst our little indie fabs and also the larger indie community at large, we do share each other's posts and we do support each other. We do attend each other's author events and things of that nature.
So you think that the current method of newsletters and gathering email lists and things of that nature, twittering out your titles over and over again, that's working for authors, or
I can't say. Well, for instance, I have a universal link for a couple of my books. Now today, I participated in a share tweet for tweet or Facebook post for another Facebook post, and that went well. But yet, I can't see that anyone has clicked on my universal link today. So,
yeah, right? I
you
mean,
take
you do the work,
I'm being
but who's
honest, you take everything with a grain of salt, but to do
right?
nothing, you get nothing. So, nothing
Yeah,
ventured, nothing gained.
exactly. I guess it is just a grand experiment to see what will catch and what won't. Um, so you have 4 novels. Are you working on a fifth now, or how do you do
I
your
am.
writing?
I am. I'm working on working title, and also in contemporary. It's called Ida's Fishing Ground. And all my titles have multiple meanings, which I like to get going.
I'm getting the feeling that at one point in your life you thought of yourself as a poet.
No, not really.
No, these are very
Although, you know what?
private.
People have read my books and they say that I do write with so much imagery and I'm like a poet, I'm like an artist. So I take that to heart. That means so much to me.
Well, in terms of the novel writing, do you do any other type of writing? Short fiction, flash fiction? You said you're not a poet, but do you do essays or anything like that?
Yes, I do. In fact, this was again going back to when I published my first novel. Boy, I was becoming a writing fool. Not only did I do the memoirs, I started writing e-zine articles. And because I'm from Rhode Island, I based them on Rhode Island. So I had that, I don't know how well that worked out, but then I republished them at Author's Den and I prefaced them with Read, spelled RHODE. And
Uh,
I still write memoirs. I call them modern memoirs because they kind of reflect on things that thinking about today. And I still do my weekly blog. I think I'm up to
I was going to
140
ask you.
pages.
Yeah, it sounds like you would be a perfect candidate for a blog with your Rhode Island background. I mean, that would be a perfect place for you to start writing.
Yeah, I start my blog is mostly based on my life as an indie. I'll put things that might be happening to me in real time and what I happen to be thinking at the time. But most of the time I feel they're uplifting because I need to have some uplift in my life because, as an indie author, it's so hard. You could easily just say, oh, that's it, I'm throwing it in.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, do you feel it in your soul though, in terms of you have to continue writing, you have to put something out there, or is it developed into more of a hobby, a habit?
The more I procrastinate, I'm still hanging in here. I guess I can't give it up. So I've learned, I don't really make New Year's resolutions, but I think I've come at terms with myself and at peace with myself that to me, writing has to be the most important thing. And I write like with the speed of a glacier too. I write so tediously slow.
Yeah,
And, even though it's a joy, it can be very painstaking to me because, why? Don't ask me why. I've got to get that most elusive word or that most elusive phrase down on paper when I should just be able to dump down what I'm thinking and then make sense of it after. Sometimes I do that, but most of the time, I work the way I do. And I'm happy to say that for me, this is progress. I wrote 736 words in chapter 1.
when was this today?
No, over the course of 2 days. Whereas other people, they might write thousands of words in a day. My hat's off to
Maybe,
them.
yeah. I mean, my theory is write as just write every single day. Just try to get something down on paper. Eventually, you'll have a completed manuscript. I
Yes.
mean, don't. It's a race of you, one person, basically. I mean, you're racing against yourself. Nobody else's efforts are really, or shouldn't tamper with what you're trying to accomplish.
No, I'm
Um,
my own worst enemy.
when I read 100 Wild Mushrooms, memoirs of the '60s, now I'm looking for it and I don't see it anymore. I mean, am I looking at psilocybin or hallucinogenics in this manuscript?
No, actually, it's basically how my sister and I, even though the counterculture was going all around us, we basically lived our lives as kids. We rode our bicycles, did our roller skating, blew bubbles, smoked our candy cigarettes, and we lived our lives as children. Went on our little road trips. That's basically it. And I like the title mushrooms because you think of the psychedelic mushrooms of the 60s, and you
Yeah,
think,
or
you
nowadays. I mean, that's what you've used on the cover too, the special magic
yeah, the
mushroom.
mushrooms, right?
Yeah, I've seen those all over the place. They're pretty unique. I've never seen them in the wild or anything, but I've seen pictures of them. It's incredibly interesting. So you were a kid during the '60s.
Yes, by 1969, I graduated high school. I was 18.
Oh, great. My mom was 69 and 18 and 69 as well. She says that she thought about going to Woodstock and her dad wouldn't let her go, and she regrets it to this day. Um, had you thought about maybe popping out there and checking out the musical
No,
festival? Or it was
no,
nothing
because
at that point, was it? I mean, did people think it was a huge thing until after it happened, or was it more or less a big thing to begin
I
with?
think once you got there, you probably realized the
Right?
magnanimity of it.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
tore down that
that would
fence and
never
everything.
have appealed to me. Being out in the rain, not getting my hair washed. Oh, that would not have been me.
Yeah, it sounds like I wouldn't probably done it either, and probably wouldn't have looked back on it regretfully in any way whatsoever. I think I'm a totally different person than my mom, though. Um, so you're a memoirist. I mean, that is definitely a genre all on its own, and the contemporary fiction as well. I tend to write contemporary fiction. I've been playing around with speculative fiction a lot lately. I'm one of those authors that kind of dump words and then go back and fix all the thousands of mistakes that I make. I
Well,
try.
I envy you.
I don't know. Don't envy me. I'm so sloppy. It's unbelievable. But I think everything can, be fixed in the editorial process. And are you pacing yourself by sentence? You write a sentence, you go back, make sure it's perfect, and then move
Well,
on.
what I do, I always say my best writing is away from the keyboard because, and obviously the ideas channel through me, words, phrases, sentences, and my characters seem to actually speak to me. Like this story, I'm one of those pantsers is kind of taking on, which is what I love, and I know I've nailed it. If the story is taking on a life of its own and I see its own little offshoots that kind of will tie in afterwards. So that's what's going on now. So even if I think I'm not producing quantity wise, I know I've got like a mine in my head.
So you do not go into any of your stories or your novels or your books with an idea of where you're going until you get there.
Very, I might have an idea from beginning to where I want it to go at the end. And I have like some key points, but then how I get there and what may happen is up to what my characters drive me to do.
I find that the best way to write too. I mean, that's the exciting part, isn't it? You write something, and then the unfortunate part is that you go back and you realize, oh, I just have to dump tens of thousands of words because they don't make sense
Oh,
anymore.
that happens. And I find that yeah, yeah. The way I work, though, see, I always go back and reread. See, for being a pantser, not really writing much other stuff down, it helps me keep my focus, and I'll know that, one other detail I'm going to write, I better jive with information that I included before.
How much do you write before not going back anymore? So, I mean, for instance,
I'm a chapter. I'll do
a
a
chapter.
chapter.
'Cause, man, I will get stuck. I'll write chapters after chapters and then go back to the first one and just start reworking it. I'll be like stuck in the mud with that one particular chapter. But you'll write a chapter, quit it after you're done with it, and move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'll write that chapter, go back, say, now when I finish chapter one, I will go back read the prologue again, and read chapter 1 again. It helps me with the editing too. I mean, it may not look the same when I'm done with the entire novel because, I give myself the liberty to change things, add things, but I'm also getting a sense of editing because it's very hard when people tell you don't edit your own books, but I do. And I think I do a pretty good job because I just do it so often.
What grade did you teach in school?
I'm an retired elementary school teacher. I taught 3rd, 5th, and 6th.
So sixth, they get into the grammar. Fifth, they do too, right? In terms of commas and
Yes.
all that good stuff. I would imagine that gave you a good grounding in terms of your grammar.
Well, when I had gone to the supermarket at one time, I had met one of my former students who was in high school. And he said, he said, what I had taught him in 6th grade, they pretty much just kind of went with it as he went on. So I guess that was my strong suit. And it was so nice to hear that it meant so much to him.
Do you like grammar?
I don't think I'm a stickler for it because I have this saying that, most people might not know what their colon is used for. So what about a semicolon? And I hate semicolons. I
I
do.
love Vonnegut. He says that semicolons, if you see one, you should shoot it dead because,
Oh, I don't like them either. Why? Just start a new sentence.
yeah, start a new sentence, put a comma there. I mean, why even bother? It's such a useless
Oh,
piece of
and I love
punctuation.
long sentences too. Can't help it. I'm trying
Yeah.
to curb that.
There's nothing wrong with a long, beautiful sentence as long as it's not a run-on, right? I mean, my wife will read my stuff and say run on. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll put a period in the middle of it. So you're part of the Indie Fab Six, I guess they're called
Yes,
now.
yes.
Yeah. Yep.
May I shout out their names?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'm so Indie Fabs, Aaliyah Del Rey, R.M. Gautier, J.B. Richards, Lyra Shanti, Joanne Van Leerdam.
Who's your favorite?
Oh, I love them all the same. I do.
So are you one of the original Fab Four, or are
Yes,
you? Yeah.
yes.
Why? How did you start this group? I mean, basically, this is a very fascinating situation for me. I'm a very solo person.
It
I mean,
was. Oh, so am I. I'm very solo, and I think for the most part I still am. But I consider the Indie Fabs my rocks, my support group. I feel they keep me going. We met in 2016. 3 of us happened to have an author interview with the same person. We ended up on the same interview page. And then we also met up again. That would be Jeannie, J.B. Richards, myself, and I think it was Aaliyah Del Rey at the time in that same interview. And I'd known Lyra. Then we met up again when Renee, R.M. Gautier, had run the first author event any of us even participated in at the Indie Writers Cooperative. It was one of the big epic events too, because so many were involved. And we just clicked. In fact, Lyra was facing a hurricane in Florida at the time, and she prepared her material and was afraid that she wouldn't be able to go on. So Jeannie and I encouraged her to send us her stuff via email, and we would pinch hit for her. But as it was, it turned out okay. She didn't lose her power. But we started a bond since then. And then Joanne was always an integral part of the picture. That would be Joanne Van Leerdam. But then it just seemed natural that she become part of what we now call the Indie Fabs, no longer the Indie Fab 5, but the Indie Fabs.
It's fascinating because I mean, authors are generally about themselves. And they're very selfish people. I mean, if you're succeeding, that means I'm not succeeding. I've got to
But
knock
that's
you down a
wrong.
peg.
That's a
Yeah,
wrong attitude to
I
have.
agree. I agree totally. I mean, we need a community, don't we, in terms of
Yes,
support and whatnot.
yes.
But not many people have communities, though. I mean, that's the sad thing. If you go on Twitter or Facebook, I mean, you'll see people communicating or trying to, but they seem to be communicating about selfish things. They're not really trying to establish a relationship with other writers. Have you experienced anything like the Indie Fabs, other
No,
than
in
your group?
fact,
Yeah,
all
exactly,
of
right?
us, no, all of us kind of encourage others to find their own posse or their own Indie Fab small community because they really do. We help each other weather the storm. And I'm fond of saying I don't think I would be where I am today without the support of the Fabs and the indie community at large, because you get to see what other people are thinking, and you're not alone.
So break it down for me in terms of what would happen. So you're working on your fifth novel now. You're going to be done with it. What happens? You put the end at the bottom of your manuscript. What happens?
Well, I will ask Renee to design my cover. I will probably self-publish again. Well, that's a learning curve for me too. See, I'd been out of the game so long after I published Underlying Notes, and I went with an indie publisher. Back at that time, there were a lot of them around. That seemed to be, I thought I'd arrived. Of course, you make peanuts on the royalties. Then, all right, it was 10 years later that I published an enlightening quiche. So I missed all this. I had stopped really going on Facebook and any other social media. So I went with what I call a hybrid publisher. And now that I know better, that I've been back in the saddle on Facebook for a year, I will self-publish, and I'll give a shout out to Golden Box Books Publishing, because they're the ones that formatted 100 Wild Mushrooms, Memoirs of the 60s. And they're one of the most supportive groups, venues for indies. So I will go with them again after Renee designs my cover.
But that's it though. Just Renee is going to design your cover. Nobody else in the group will look at your manuscript and say,
Oh,
hey.
they would if I asked them, but I actually had them help me with Mr. Wizzato was my novella that was part of the Once Upon a Fabulous Time. It's one of my flaws. I get very proprietary of my stuff. And so I probably won't put it out for editing. As I said, I'm my own worst enemy, and I'm also my own worst critic. If I fail, well, I failed on my own.
Do you read other people's stuff, critiques?
Yes, only if
But
they ask.
only if they ask. But you will not give your book up for critiquing.
No, because I learned a lesson. When I published Underlying Notes with the indie publisher, it was being edited, and the editor missed something, and she would have skewed the whole meaning of my sentence. And there were a couple of things, because no one owns your own work as you do and have a vested interest, because you've read it over and over again, even though maybe they have the more professional pair of eyes. So he finally told me, just go along and edit it myself. Then we had a good working relationship where he had me edit his book, and he would tell me, never mind the grammar because they'll take care of that. Just read it for, the flow. But I spotted an error. There's a difference between Calgary and Calgary, whatever the word is. And I pointed this out to him. I said, you don't mean, the Calgary on the cross. So at that point, he had me edit the whole book because, these are things that I can pick up.
So you are hesitant because you're afraid that the critiquer is going to be more professional and less of a reader.
Picky. Well, I get very proprietary because also maybe it will stifle my creativity. It might make me think I'm not good enough. Because when I first published now an enlightening quiche, and I was looking for readers to get, the pre-publication readers, well, and I know I have a sense of that I have a good sense of writing. Well, this person wrote me back. She says, I just can't forward. I cannot go forward reading it. It's so terribly written. It was like, oh. So I said, well, thank you for your time. And, if I got a bunch of that, whether it's true or not, it would just stifle my creativity. And I know.
Wow, that's a tough one. That's horrible. So somebody actually said that to you?
Yes. I mean, some of these people might be just frustrated readers or frustrated writers. I know. I mean, if I thought I sucked, that's another thing. I know when I'm writing something, if it sucks, and I say, I got to tear this up. This is not good. It's not going for me. So I've got this sense. And, for somebody to take that attitude, I said, well, but then I've had other people read it, and they said it was good. I need a little validation. But if I think something stinks, it stinks, and I won't put it out.
Yeah, I guess that's a rotten apple there. I mean, in terms of critique, I want anyway, for people to tell me why exactly they didn't like it. Oh, I'm just a bad writer? Is that what you're saying? No, that's not going to work for me.
Well,
Tell
she
me
kind of
why the
said that
writing. What
to me.
happened?
She kind of said that to me.
No, that's not good. I mean, you want to hear more specific details. Well, look, the reason that I like this is the sentences are blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And they need specifics. What motivates you? What excites you?
What
What gets
excites
your
me?
what gets your juices going in terms of your creativity?
I think just life around me, really. I mean, I don't know. I just get motivated.
What's it like being in Rhode Island? Oops. What's it like being in Rhode Island?
Well, I love it. I mean, I have been to other places, but I just love it because there's a variety of geography. In fact, it's so rich in history. I love the beach, so there's plenty of coastline for that. There are so many quaint communities that I like about Rhode Island. And in fact, that's why a big part of my writing is to incorporate the geographic entities, historic landmarks, and the culture of Rhode Island.
I've heard there's a lot of corruption too, mafia influences and crime. I would imagine it would be a wonderful, motivating, creative aspect to your writing as well. Does that ever leak into that? Or am I
I
think
don't, I don't
no,
know that I would approach that angle. I kind of get mostly into the day-to-day minutia of life between characters in a small town.
it's interesting. Whaling, anything like that? I mean, Rhode Island was at one time a huge whaling community.
Yes. In fact, I've got it in my head. I said, probably the next novel I do should be set in Block Island.
Yeah, Block Island up here is beautiful. I'd love
Oh,
to
yes.
go.
Yes, I think I may, that might be where I set my sights next because underlying notes, the setting wasn't that major a part as it was in the Lightning Quiche, but in underlying notes, it was the southern end of the state where I had lived. And Lightning Quiche was in the Blackstone Valley region, the area that I had taught for 29 years. So I was very, very versed in that community. And this one I've done more research on because Ida's Fishing Ground is set in Foster, Rhode Island, which is very, very rural.
So history plays a huge part in your writing.
Yes.
Yeah, history is an amazing. I love history. Um, yeah, I mean, it's very intriguing to me in terms of the geographical elements of fiction writing. I mean, I guess Stephen King kind of does the same thing with Maine, where you just kind of pick a place and you pick it apart in your fiction and make stories about it.
Right. I
Uh,
love Stephen King.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, he's a genius in terms of writing. I mean, remember when he used to be made fun of? You read Stephen King, it used to be a joke, like you're not reading real literature.
He's such a great writer because it's not
Yeah,
just the horror. He just he just entertains you with the characters
yeah.
and just so realistic. That's what I admire about him
Get
most.
sucked into his work. I mean, that's a magical thing, isn't it? To find a
Yes,
book that
yes.
just sucks you into it. It doesn't happen very often. And when it does, I mean, it's just an amazing feeling. Who are some of your other favorite writers?
Well, other than Stephen King, Anne Lamott, one of my favorite books, all-time books, and is Wuthering Heights.
Oh yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah, love it, love it. And now that I'm an indie author, I try to be supportive by I'm only reading the works written by indie authors so I can, read and review.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day where I realized I had never read an indie writer in my entire life.
Really, being one yourself?
Well, I don't even know if I'm an indie writer. I just haven't found a publisher or an audience or anything like that. I'm hearing my own voice so badly, I can only hear it echoing in my ears.
Oh, I'm
It's
backing
it's
up
horrible.
further. Does this help?
I don't know. I think it's helping. It's gone. I can hear it slightly.
All right, I've backed up even further.
All right, let me write down the time here. No, I don't know what I consider myself. I write for a publication in magazines. I write a lot of short fiction. I've written one complete novel, or two complete novels actually, and I'm not quite sure what to do with them. I'd published my first one on Amazon for a little while, and this was before I even started my podcast or started talking to indie publishers or writers. So I had really no clue what to do with it, and just kind of languished there and got buried, and nobody bought it. And so, I mean, I pulled it off to do a rewrite and maybe possibly publish it and see it'll happen. But I mean, what is the definition of indie publishing? You just go about it your own, trying to
Yeah,
get
I
those
consider,
digital downloads, right?
right, I consider it a self-published author, but indie, right, going on your own individually.
How do you feel about the quality of indie writing?
I feel it's very good, unless I'm very, I know can get a bad rap because, well, it's like good and bad doctors. It's the good and bad in every profession. I'm
Yeah,
fortunate
isn't the
to have enjoyed the indie books I've read thus far very much.
do you feel like the bad kind of suck down the quality a little bit, kind of outweigh the good authors? I mean, the reputation is astounding. I mean, when you have a bad independent published book, I mean, it just
Yeah,
flavors everybody.
I also see, well, the traditionally published books. I mean, some of those are probably overrated.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, in terms of word of mouth, that's definitely very important because Yu Howie is an independent author and he's got a stellar reputation, doesn't he? It transcends into publishing. I mean, it just goes towards that's a good story, you need to read it. Can you think of anybody else that's broken into mainstream with their independent writing that's not like a romance writer?
Trying to think.
Right, that's where the problem lies. It's like, who else is writing independent stuff that's gone that extra step?
Well,
You know what I
what
mean?
about the author who wrote? All right, that would be considered romance, though. The Bridges of Madison County. That's romance.
Was that independent?
I think that particular book was. He took a chance with it, put a few on a bookshelf in a bookstore, and it just sold rampantly.
I mean, that would definitely qualify as independent. I'm looking at the Wikipedia for the novel right now. 1992, though. I think that a little bit predates the independent movement in terms of Amazon and being able to produce manuscripts like that, right?
I think so too.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the Bridges in Madison County blew up, blew up. I mean, what was it, Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep that was in the
Yes.
movies? Yeah, that was 192 pages too. That was a short one, so maybe more of a novella. Let's see. Let me look up independent success stories. I mean, yeah, it's weird because I mean, I've talked to a bunch of indie authors who have put out 5 or 6 different novels, and at the end of the day, if you're looking at what they've accomplished, they've written great literature, but they don't sell very well. And my question is, how can you go that next step?
That's hard. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you. And that is why, again, I'll go back to the indie fabs because we tell each other, we're feeling it. This is going to be our year. And the idea is you psych each other up because it's so easy to go down that road because it's a hard barrier to break.
So this is going to be our year. How are you going to make it happen?
For me, I don't see myself breaking out of the mold of not having a standalone website, not having a newsletter or doing a swap. I'm just going to write the best novel that I can. And hopefully, I've said this before, I'll be discovered like Lana Turner was on a drugstore stool.
I mean that's what happens though to get you discovered on that stool. I mean, Lana Turner had great genetics, which came from her mom and dad, right? And when she's sitting there, she glows a certain way that attracts the attention. And whether or not your book has great bones or great genes, how do you get it to attract that attention? What stool do you put it on?
That is very hard to find a targeted audience. And I think that's like the holy grail for most indie authors, to find your targeted audience, which is why a lot who experiment with
I'm not seeing anything gigantic come from it at all. You know what I mean? I'm with you in terms of being discovered because it's going to be organic, right? Somebody's going to catch something that you wrote and go, wow, this is amazing. Mom, read this. And mom's going to go, hey, dad, read this. And dad's going to pass it around wherever he is. And sooner or later, thousands of people know where you are.
yeah, word of mouth is always the best.
That's where I'm at, right? And it's like, how can you capture that word of mouth? How can you get that person? How could you be that person on the stool that gets the attention? I mean, is it all, my wife calls it lightning in the bottle, right? I mean, it's a cliche, but at the same time, is there truth to that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think we all try hard to get those readers, even if it's one at a time. You know, it's like the ripple effect. It just is, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. I don't know that people who have written volumes of books get this, achieve this fame, or people who maybe write that one book. Um, Look at the person who wrote what is it, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. She wrote one book, didn't she? And that was it. Or she
Yeah,
wrote
toward the
that
end of her
book, and
life,
then there
the
was
second
another
one
book that
wasn't received as well.
the one that she published or somebody published for her right
The
before she passed.
Watchmen, right? I think Still the Watchmen, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, and it was lauded, and they didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a very good book, but it was also kind of stolen from her and
Right.
published by a family member. She was suffering from dementia, I think, at that point in
Mhm.
time, something along those lines. But yeah, one book, boom, and
She
she's
was
what?
meant just to have that one book, and it, I think it outsold or, sold as many copies as the Bible did, to tell you the truth. It's one of
I,
the best-selling books every single day.
and I think she had a relationship with oh God, what was his
Oh, I
name?
know. Is it Somerset Maugham?
No, the other guy. He wrote True
Truman
Crime.
Capote.
Yeah, that's him.
Truman.
I think her relationship with him had something to do with it. I mean, he was famous, like New York famous, like parties every weekend famous. And they were like an item for a long time. Not a romantic item, obviously, but they were, had a really deep friendship. And I wonder if that had something to do with it. I mean, catching that rising star.
I don't
I don't
know.
know. That's the part, right? I mean, we don't know. We can see who's doing it. I mean, you can read a Hugh Howey, you can read a Stephen King. Anne Rice wrote The Interview with the Vampire from a short story that she had published someplace else, right?
I guess
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know too much about Anne Rice except the
No,
vampire story.
right? The Stroker Awards just came out, or the early nominations came out today, and you're looking through that list, and no names are like popping up as being outrageously famous. But I'm wondering if that's going to catapult some of those authors to the next level of their career. I mean, if you can get on one of those lists and be nominated for like an award that is recognized or something along those lines, maybe that's where it starts. I don't know, I'm as lost as everybody else, but I mean, in terms of being able to discuss it, that's what I find interesting.
Thing is just, how much are you willing to put into it or go off on a limb? That's my question.
Well, I'm like you. I love the writing. I love the storytelling. I mean, when I wrote today, I was supposed to, I have two stories I'm working on. A short story that I have to make to 3,000. It's only at 1,500 words right now. And then I'm working on something that might end up being a novel, but it's at like 9,000 words at present. I don't know where it's going to end up, but I'm, working my way through both of those things. And instead of actually doing any work on them, I wrote a flash story, a 900 word thing that I published on Reddit. I wrote it, I edited it, and I published it. And there is no greater joy in my life than putting something out there that potentially will make somebody go, wow. You know what I
Yes.
mean? That makes me feel so good. It makes me feel so wonderful. And I don't really know what to expect. I mean, like we just talked about, we have that fantasy of being that, beautiful woman on a stool that everybody notices and wants to put in a movie or something. But, the likelihood that happens is so slim. I just
Right.
love the writing,
Me too.
the art
And
development.
I'm happy when a reader tells me how much the book meant to them. That to me, that is just so fulfilling.
Right. And I don't know, maybe that's our, I mean, what do we want? $1 million? We could spend $1 million, but you really can't spell that, sell that, or spend that kudos, can you?
No,
That just kind of
no.
sits in the mental piggy bank and you can use it anytime you want. It never goes away.
I look at authors like James Patterson, who's really branched out, teaming with other writers. I don't know. To me, he lost sight of himself. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, what's James Patterson is he's James Patterson, right? He writes those books that I don't read. I don't think I've ever read a James Patterson book. I
I've read a
mean,
few, and I have to say I enjoy them very much. I mean, he
right?
does grab you into the story, but I just see other writing and I see that it's superior, but you know what? He's got something that other people don't have, and kudos to him.
Right. I mean, would you count him as a Stephen King type of writer, or is he different?
I consider him different.
I'm looking at his book list right now. It's immense. I don't know what I'm looking at actually. This seems like a
He's an
lot of.
effective writer. If you're an effective writer, you've got what it takes.
What makes his work effective? Is it
Well,
just easy? Is it just easy to read, or is it?
well, I found that when I was first reading it, because I guess I write so differently, and the type of book I like to read is so different from James Patterson's style. What struck me would be his short sentences and very short paragraphs, and not too much description. But you know what? He achieves what he has to do with the bare minimum.
No, that's very true. In terms of being able to read, right? I mean, there's something about online reading or even on your phone reading where you don't want giant blocks of paragraph, right? You want it broken up into little tiny bites that you can digest easily. You don't want to feel like you're struggling through some kind of viscous fluid trying to get to the end of the novel. You want it to be effortless. You want it to wash over you. I agree. There's something definitely there. But also when you look at James Patterson or you look at Stephen King or, I'll mention Anne Rice again, even though you're not really familiar with them, but they started their careers in a different era, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could put their manuscripts in an envelope, slap some stamps on it, and send it off to a publisher or an agent or whatever, and they'd get a result back. They would know. Now, there's so many of us writing on word processor or whatever. I mean, how do we stick out? That's the question. I mean, the fab indies, I don't know why I want to say the indie something, but the fab
Indie
indies,
fabs.
the indie fabs, thank you. My dyslexia is showing up. I mean, the indie fabs might have a great idea, but how do you capitalize on your guys's commune to make it so that somebody, I mean, it doesn't have to be you, it doesn't have to be one of the, it has to be somebody in that group that gets noticed, because when that person gets noticed, you go with her. You know what I mean? Or you go with them. Are you all women?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. But if one of you gets caught, the other ones go with them, right? And that's how do you do that? How do you make it more likely that one of you catches that star?
I don't know, but we just support each other as best we can. Like when I think of the author takeovers, I mean, you don't know who's going to show up, but generally we will for each other. And we say we're getting the party started, and this is just how we are. So we kind of, we're just kind of attached at the hip that way.
Who started that stuff? Do you know the
Oh
author
yes,
take?
yes. Jeannie did. Jeannie J.B. Richards was her idea. Yep, she coined the phrase too.
And that's a Facebook thing.
Yes.
And what happens exactly?
Well, if we're going to post something of interest to the community at large, we might preface it with the indie fabs, or we might just, tag each other in a post. Most people in the indie community that we've friended know who we are anyway.
And you all will congregate on that post and begin some kind of interaction,
Not
or
every post. Actually, that's what we did before we had our own little private, we call it the mansion. It's our own private group. And, we discuss strategies and possible marketing techniques. It's all things that have to do with indie stuff. But before we would banter, and I guess everybody and that, was related as a friend would see our stuff. Probably was kind of funny when you think of it, but now we just keep it private. And the
I
PM
love the idea of the
mansion.
mansion. The mansion is nice. I like that a lot. The fabs just getting together and lounging back. So what's the goal for you going forward? Do you have a set of things that you would like to see yourself accomplish?
Well, for now, if I can finish Ida's Fishing Ground, another novel in the genre of contemporary, may take me, well, several more months to do it. I'll be pleased, and then I'll take it from there and probably start the next novel. Other than that, this is it.
Do you try to get yourself hybrided as well? I mean, I'm trying to get your stuff out there to traditional publishers
I
before you
won't.
publish online.
I won't anymore. I just want to I just want to be a true indie author because I think I've learned my lesson, because as a hybrid, I don't see the royalties until I get the royalty report from my publisher. Whereas with 100 Wild Mushrooms, I just click on reports on Amazon and I can see if I've sold anything each day.
And you're one of those unique authors as well that's kind of diversified. You've got a blog, you've got your novels, you've got your marketing community as well. Have you seen a lot of traffic driven from your blog to your?
Well, I'm very proud of my blog. Now, this is ironic too. I just revamped my web page on WordPress just to reflect my blogs. Now, I might get a trickle of people a day, if any. Yet on Author's Den, and it's not a fancy blog. In fact, half the links that you put in won't come out. Today, I had posted, and within an hour, 300 hits. And maybe by the end of the week, I'll have about 1,000 hits on that blog alone.
That's pretty significant.
So go figure. I mean, I don't know if it's sold me any books, but that really isn't my purpose in writing the blog. And I think I've read research statistics that say it really shouldn't be. You know, that's not your place to just hammer in your book. I mean, I guess you could.
No, yeah, you're doing it for something totally different there. But at the same time, I would think your blog is holding hands with your books, right? I mean,
Yes, it does. You're right.
you have to have the links on the side, or this is who I am. You could read more of my stuff here. And the fact that your blog is Rhode Island centric, right?
Well, not my blog. My essays will be at an Author's Den. You know, I'm not writing those anymore, but I've got enough of them up there that it's plenty of reading fodder, and I've got enough. I've also have 60 retro 60s articles. I've got enough of those up, you know, to entertain people. Then it's got, you know, my books featured, but the blog is its own separate entity. And as I became back in the saddle in 2016, all my blogs now reflect aspects of my life as an indie, and they really have taken off at Author's Den. I have to say it. I'm thrilled with that.
You know, I love the idea of being an indie because it really does give you the power, doesn't it? You can make your own bed, really.
That's exactly it. You're your own boss, and you get to see things. You get to control. You have control.
And it is all about that community too. I mean, I don't know, 300 people a day looking at my stuff on my website would be amazing. What do you think gave you that kind of leverage or gave you that kind of
I don't know. I've
visibility?
been on Author's Den several years, and I don't know. My other articles get lots of hits too, and many of my stories, I haven't written any recently, but usually they'll be on the top 10, maybe even #1 in their category. I just don't know. Maybe because that's a super large community of authors, and they're interested in reading. Although they've instituted now an aspect called the review program, and I've had about 5 requests to review my books, and that also includes Once Upon a Fabulous Time. So, you know, I'm pleased with that.
How does Author's Den work?
Basically, they have free membership and a few other paying memberships. I never really thought it would amount to much. I mean, it's kind of a plain site. It seems to be separate and apart from the dynamics of Facebook, but it's working for me.
That's fascinating. I'm looking at it right now, and you're right. It doesn't pop. I mean, there's nothing
No,
that says
not at all.
click on this person's name, click on that person's name. It's like, oh, it's kind of
No,
vanilla.
no, you're right.
It's interesting. So, yeah, maybe I will examine this a little bit and see what's up.
But every day I do go in and I change something on my biography. I'll date it and I'll put something that happens to be going on. And that will bring you to the surface anyway of the search.
So it's a lot of people who want to be writers, who aren't writing, who like writers. And if you show yourself as being a writer, they'll be like, okay, let's see what this person is doing, and they'll go and look at what you're accomplishing. Does that sound fair? Or
I guess so. Or they're just other authors interested in reading. I guess it's built in that you could critique, because you do have a commenting section there. You can critique another person's writing. It's for that too, but
you really don't. You don't want to be critiqued, though. You don't want to be critiqued.
No.
I mean, I will tell you.
Something that you don't like, but you know, don't start picking apart.
No, yeah, I got my degree in English, creative writing, and I did workshops. And when we formed those circles, and you knew it was going to be one of your stories that they were going over that day, man, I got to tell you, it's painful, right? I mean, it's really, really painful. It's like having a boil lanced or something.
Yeah, but it's
But
okay if you put yourself out there and you recognize that that is what's going to happen.
it
I've seen,
strengthens you. I mean, it tempers you. It makes you stronger as an artist, though. I mean, if somebody's going to tell you suck, there was a website, it's called zoetrope.com. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You could submit a story after you reviewed 5 people's stories. So basically, you're always reviewing other people's work, and you're able to submit something after 5 reviews. I submitted a story. This was about, oh God, 20 years ago or something. And this person said, you know what? I'm not going to tell you that you should take an ashtray and break your fingers to stop you from ever writing another single word again. But on the other hand, you need to blah, 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 blah. It's like that was the harshest thing anybody has ever said to me. And
oh,
it helped, right? Because I started looking at that story going, okay, my grammar sucks.
I don't know. Well, I guess if it applies, or you start, do you start knuckling under and seeing what other people see for you? That's where I draw the line.
I mean, it's not about me though, is it? In terms of what I accomplish with my writing, when I look at my words, I'm, a genius. But it's not about me though, is it?
I
I
never think of
want
myself as that, but I have to have a gut feeling about what but I never see myself. In fact, I'm just overwhelmed a lot. I just never see myself as, oh, wow, all that.
I mean, you don't, but I want other people's opinions. I can get my opinion, but I'm not going to give myself any money because that's kind of empiric or cannibalistic, isn't it? I mean, I can give myself $1, but that's not going to help. What I need is other people to say, "Oh my God, you're a genius." You know what I mean? And if they aren't saying that, I want to know why. Why do you like James Patterson's work more than my work? Why? What does Stephen King do that I'm not doing? And people are going to tell you why. I mean, probably people jump on Stephen King too and say you suck and you should break your
Oh,
fingers
I'm
and never write
sure.
again. God, you remember back in the 80s and 90s, people hated him. Hated him. They did not like him. They made fun of people who read him. He was not literature. He was not a good author,
Because they wanted to preserve the status quo of the
right?
traditional publishing
And
world.
now he's a cream, isn't he? He rose to the top. There aren't many people that are accomplishing what he has been
No, he
accomplishing.
does
And
both. He has trad publishing and he's self-published because he
no,
can
he
now.
does, yeah. It's true. He does do the traditional publishing, but he is muscle. When he publishes independently, man, he's got the weight of $500 million
Oh,
worth of sales behind him.
right. Speaks
Incredible,
for itself.
right? And you're going to be drawn to it. Green Mile, I think, was one of those that he serially published, or was that one of the collections? I'm not sure. There was a story that he did in a serial form, and people flocked to it. It was
Oh,
big news. Do you remember? It was like people.
sure. I have it in my bookcase. I know what you mean. It's like the Dark Tower series.
It's kind of like that, but I don't think it's a Dark Tower series. I mean, it's like it is fantasy. I mean, it is like a macabre kind of horror fantasy type story. I did not read it all the way through. I got frustrated with waiting for it. I'm not one of those that can, go back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you get that muscle? How do you build that up? And we're not going to do it Stephen King style anymore. My wife's not going to pull Carrie out of the trash and tell me to keep sending it out because there's no place to send it out to really, unless you have
Right.
that following.
Yeah.
And you've experienced the worst part about it, being taken advantage of, I believe. Right? Would you say that or no?
Uh, what do you mean by being taken advantage of?
I mean, you sent your stuff out to hybrid publishers and they're like, okay, do the legwork and we'll take some of the money.
Yeah, they do take the money. But I also remember now in the early days, before I went with an indie publisher, I tried to go traditionally published by sending my manuscript via literary, trying to find a literary agent. So that's a whole thing in itself. And why should people? No wonder there are more indies. Why should we be waiting and waiting and waiting just to get an agent? And I
Yeah.
would get a letter back from and you're going to get this stuff. It's not what they're looking for, because everybody's looking to make a buck as to what genre might be popular. And then they don't even, to me, if I wrote a sentence like this, one agent wrote me back, "I'm afraid I cannot accept." Afraid. What are you afraid of? You write that in a sentence?
No, and you know what? It doesn't make any sense to do that anymore. Why do they have to have the relationship? You know what I mean? Why can't you establish the relationship? What makes an agent special in that they're the only ones able to establish relationships
And
with
to
them?
be your liaison, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just really doesn't make any sense. And why give them 10%? You
That's
know,
right.
why? I mean, honestly, I like designing covers. I mean, I like the aspect. You know what I don't like is marketing. I don't like to sell my work. I hate it. It makes me feel very, very uncomfortable. I don't like it at all. I talked to a guy named Jarrett Robinson. He's a successful indie guy, built up in a readership, and he's done some, pretty successful things. Whereas, that's all he has to do is write, and that's how he's making a living. His wife is part of his business and everything. And, wow, my train of thought's gone completely. How did I start that out?
Wouldn't that be a joy?
Jarrett Robinson. Oh, marketing.
That would be a
He
joy.
said,
That's all you had to worry about was right.
oh my God, I forget about it. Well, that's not the only he does. And the point that I was trying to make is that he is a marketer, and the way he markets is he pretends that that's his job to market his own stuff. He's not the author anymore. He's the marketer. How can he sell it? You know what I mean? What advertising would work for the author that's paying him to do the marketing? And I just can't remove myself. I feel so icky doing it. And a lot of authors feel that problem.
Yes. And you almost have to become a business person. And I don't know that I have the stamina. For instance, if Amazon ads are the way to go, and I see that they can be very lucrative, I don't know that I want to spend the time figuring out keywords, target audience, comparing, what book is similar to mine. And it's still a gamble.
I might do it if I thought it would make some kind of difference, but I'm afraid that if I did it, it would just put money in Amazon's pocket and I would get no return from it at all. That's what I've heard with Facebook and Twitter ads, where you'll buy like $10 worth of whatever's, and it doesn't kind of come back to you, and it just kind of
Yeah,
disappears.
I've
I
heard that
mean,
about the I've heard that about the Facebook ads, but I'm thinking that the Amazon ads are probably more lucrative if you know what you're doing.
I've heard the same with Amazon ads. You're not the only person that said that in terms of being able to, make you a little bit of money and put you on top of things. Because I think what they do is they'll take what you're writing, if you're writing contemporary fiction, they'll take your contemporary fiction novel and advertise it on a big contemporary fiction novel. So if you see, like, I don't know who else writes contemporary fiction off the top of my head,
Oh, Lucy Barton is one I can think of.
you'll click on her novel and then there's your ad connected to it. Oh, you like this? Well, check out this person too. I mean, it behooves Amazon to make you successful. They make more money that way.
Yeah,
And you're not paying them anything to publish your novel on their site. And at the end of the day, I would imagine they're spending a lot of resources trying to figure out how to make money off independent publishers, right? I mean, why not? They're using the bandwidth to hold their novels on.
I wish I figured it out.
Well, I think you're doing the right thing. It's interesting. And this has been an interesting conversation too. Um, you know, we don't know what we're doing until we know what we're doing, right? I mean, in retrospect, we're going to be able to look back and go, God, I was so ignorant, but now I know everything.
Well, I do feel better. As I said, I feel better knowing, I feel more confident now in, just going indie all the way, because
And it's great.
I
You're not
don't
you're not
like
even
having
doing
to
it
wait.
alone anymore. You're holding hands with, five other people that are doing the exact same thing you are too. So if they're failing, you learn from their failures. If you fail, they're learning from your failures. I mean, that's got to feel so good.
It does. We feel stronger moving forward.
Together. I mean, I definitely think building community of people who want to write and make money with their words is the best way to go.
Yeah, very good. Good way to end this program.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually have three questions for you to finish us off. The first one being, you are obviously a very strong person, a very strong writer, and you've done some pretty good things for yourself in terms of writing four novels. I mean, what would you say to somebody that's struggling to accomplish what you're trying to do, or feeling maybe the burn of self-doubt, what kind of suggestion would you give them?
Well, based on my own experience, I would just say you've got to write from your heart and, tell your story. Don't try to tell it because you think it's a popular thing to write, or you want to please people, because you're never going to please everyone. You can't. Just write for yourself, and hopefully, be true to yourself, and something will rise from the ashes of obscurity because of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that too. Write from your heart. And if you love speculative fiction, don't write romance. You're just going to end up being miserable at the end of the day. Those are beautiful words. My second question for you is, what are you reading? What is on your Kindle? What is on your nightstand that
Okay.
is driving you to flip those pages?
Well, I'm currently reading Sandhills by another indie author named Alan van der Rohe. It's very good. It's a contemporary, and it's a coming of age for this young man. And I just bought the new short in the Fallen Cross pack, written by Aaliyah Del Rey, and I'm going to be
Oh,
reading that too.
I know who that is. She's a wonderful person. I had a
Yes.
really great time talking to her.
And I just listened to her today because I think the podcast was just ready. So I listened. Very
Oh,
interesting.
fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. Um, so, yep, those sound like great books. And last question is, where can we find you?
Okay, my webpage is basically on Author's Den, and let's see how I have it done. It's just www.authorsden, Eva Pasco.
And you do not have a Facebook?
Yeah, but it's under my private name, so it's
Oh,
not
gotcha.
really I
And
just go by the
obviously,
Author's Den. That seems to be serving me the best.
Authors Den. Okay. Um, and just look up your name on Authors Den, and they can find
Yeah,
more links to your
I'm also
stuff.
on Goodreads.
Goodreads as well. Okay. Do you put reviews and stuff on there?
Oh, yes.
I love Goodreads. I did not use it as much as I am now, and I found it to be a wonderful resource.
I do. I like it. The groups are very helpful.
I've not found any groups. Would you recommend any?
Yes, Navigating Indie Authors World. Very good. Very current. I feel it's very involved. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy that.
Okay. I'll check them out. And obviously, you have a Amazon authors page. I've been using that during our conversation to kind of look around at your titles and your covers and whatnot, and recommend people go there as well. I really enjoyed our conversation. Do you want to
I
add
do
anything
too.
before we
Uh,
say goodnight?
I just want to thank you very much for having me as a guest. I think the time flew. I just don't know where it went.
It went into Google Hangouts.
Okay, and good luck with your own writing.
Thank you. You as well. I wish you all the luck in the world, and I hope to have the Indie Fab. What is it called? The Indie Fab. Why I'm so dyslexic.
Yes. Oh,
Indie.
you can have all of us on at once.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to it. I told my friend Emma Hardcastle is one who hooked me up with you guys, and she said that you'll gang up on me. I said no, let me have them one at a time first. Yeah, we'll do it though. We'll hook it up and see what we can get going. But otherwise,
Okay.
thank you so much, and you have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
All right. Take care.